Hello and welcome to People on Earth. I am Makanaka Nyakpanda. At least 10 people were confirmed dead and at least 5 others were treated of smoke inhalation in a fire farm in Esgodini, Matebeleland South on 12 October 2022 while battling to put out a Veld fire. In the studio today, I have 2 gentlemen from a firefight to talk about Veld fires, Mr. Wilson Chimwedzi and Mr. Emmanuel Mwaja. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Okay, so to begin with, let's just get straight into it. Kindly share with us what really causes these Veld fires.
What causes fires is a very big issue that we've been looking at throughout the year. There are a lot of issues, but most of them are human-induced, or the word that we use, the technical word is anthropogenic. So in Zimbabwe, 92% of the fires that are occurring in this country are a result of human action. And human action relates to humans starting a fire, carelessness, hunting, poaching. You have the whole list, arson. You have things like kids playing with fire. I think I've repeated that one. And you also look at people who are using fire for different purposes. You're driving along the road, somebody just throws a cigarette on the verges of the road and the fire starts going out. So it's all human interaction. Where you find where it's not human, you find the rare cases where it's lightning, caused by lightning. And those are the natural fires. Or maybe some stone, because of a certain condition, a stone starts a fire and that goes on. And those are normally spontaneous fires. So 8% of that is natural and 92% is human. So you find in the instance that you are talking about, and I want to say this, our condolences to the families that lost those 10 family members. In this instance, this was a human-induced type of fire. From what we understand, the fire started from some farms quite close to that, and they came to this particular farm. So obviously, it could be somebody mining, could be somebody preparing land, and we are seeing that is the general tendency. Preparing of land is also causing the extreme fires to occur throughout the country.
Okay, so having said that, you're saying specifically that the fire at Esgodini was probably human-induced, probably by mining, like what you're mentioning. People from home would want to understand probably what will be the other alternatives instead of using fire as a way of maybe preparing land or mining or different activities.
Okay. In terms of preparing land, one of our biggest challenges in Zimbabwe right now is we've lost our livestock, and that is draft power. That's the power we use to prepare our land. We've lost these cows due to these diseases that are happening. I think you've heard of people saying their crow has no cows in it. So the cow was normally used for draft power and tillage. So because there's no cow, the next best way, because remember, Zimbabwe, we're actually going through some economic difficulties. So for people to hire a tractor is very expensive. So naturally you'll like say, what is the cheapest way? And so people rationalize, and then they end up using fire as the tool to clear the land. So this is why you're seeing there's so many fires occurring all over the country. There's people preparing for the rainy season. So they use fire to prepare their land. So that's one of the biggest challenges. And so when they do that, some of them don't understand the conditions that they've started the fire in. Right now, if you look, temperatures are very high. So it gives rise to runaway fires. And it's windy. Once you start a fire, you can't stop it. So those are the challenges that you can actually see it's human. As for mining, this is artisanal mining. Where the artisanal miners, makorokoza, so to speak, normally they want to clear the land for their detection system units. So what they use is fire. Okay, they could alternatively just cut down the grass with a slasher or something like that. But it's faster to use fire. But it tends to be a bit selfish.
Okay, so Mr. Mwaja, what are the impacts of veld fires on our daily livelihoods?
You know, fires are a threat, literally, to food security. You know, just recently, I think the last 2 weeks or so, we had fires in Headlands burning a whole field of barley, over 230 hectares. We've had probably about 200 plus hectares of wheat that have been burnt quite recently across, I think, Mash East, Mash Central as well.
Okay, so, what are the causes of those? What were the causes of those fires?
Veld fires, veld fires. You've got people hunting, people, so they would like to start a fire, the fire will run away. And most of these farmers are coming out of the communal lands that surround the commercial farmers. So you've got them, they start a fire for 1, 2, 3 reasons, and then the fires will run away. There's very strong winds, the grass is very dry, and it's quite dense as well. So once you start a fire, it's bound to run away. So you've got food security, as a threat. You've got human-wildlife conflict. The fires then enter into the safari areas where the animals stay. You affect their habitat, so they'll end up coming into our homesteads, wanting to hunt. You've got the baboons coming in, the hyenas, they'll come into our kraal trying to get goats and stuff. So then you get, human wildlife conflict is induced. You've got lives themselves, like in the instance we've just seen tragically, 10 people who have died. This fire season alone, we've got over 18 lives that have been lost across the length and breadth of the country. You've also got a threat to our animals as well, our domestic animals. The cattle, the sheep, the goats, they're out in the pastures, and then fire comes in. It will affect their grazing, and it will affect the animals themselves. They'll be affected, get burnt, they die, and so forth and so on. So it's scattered right across the board, where you see it affecting our lives and our livelihoods.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for that. We shall be taking a short break. We will be back soon. Do stay with us. Welcome back to People on Earth. We are talking about veld fires. So, Mr. Mwaja, now looking at the Esigodini tragedy, how best can we deal with veld fires?
Okay. In hindsight now, as we go back into it, obviously we're looking at it from an analytical perspective. The people who went to attack the fires were actually firefighters, which was a good starting point, because you've got people who are trained and skilled, who know how to fight fires. Unfortunately, and very tragically, they were caught up because the fire then surrounded them. There was a very strong wind, and they did not manage to get out of it. But every ward and village has a firefighting team across the country, across all the districts in the country. So they've got firefighters who are trained and who have skill and knowledge as to how to attack fires. So when a fire starts, the most important thing to do is to report a fire, no matter how small or how simple it may just seem. Go and report the fire, let the firefighting team then come and attend to the fire.
So I was about to ask you that when a fire starts, yes, we're going to report. But in the meantime, what can we do to contain the fire? Yes, we may call the fire, but are there any measures that people can do whilst we're waiting for the firefighters to come?
We must have our fire guards, So this is now the before the fire actually starts. We must make sure that our fire guards are in place, 9 meters wide, and make sure that it's clearly demarcated so that the clearing is there, it's in place. So the fire starting from there, it's coming this way. Okay, we've got a fire guard in place. It's very dangerous for villagers to just attack a fire without adequate preparation. At the end of the day, we'll just lose more and more lives. We've seen it across the country, literally everywhere, where people just, take leaves or branches and they try and attack a fire. So it's very, very important. You see a fire, no matter how much of a threat it is, it's very important. Go and report it. Let the firefighters come in. They'll come in with fire beaters, they'll come in with hose and rakes and shovels and all sorts of equipment. And they know how to mobilize themselves. And when they come, because they are trained, they'll always have a team leader, the thinker, and everybody else is the doer. So they'll come and stand and wait, and the team leader will tell them, okay, you'll pick up some soil normally, throw it in the air, they'll pick up wind direction, they'll look at where the fire is coming from, and they see how to then start attacking the fire. So in looking back into Esigodini, we must always be in a state of preparedness. It's very, very important. And even looking back into Esigodini as well, there's always the call that must be made when we are in the field. The team leader must know when to continue fighting and know when to retreat. On another day, in another time, probably 1 or 2 lives, or probably all lives, could have been saved if certain calls had been made at certain intervals. We may decide to continue fighting it, but sometimes it's better to just let it go. Okay. If it means that we're going to lose the crop, it's better than we save lives.
Okay, Mr. Chimwedzi, looking at this Esigodini tragedy, how best can you deal with wildfires?
Looking at life and property, there's a question that everyone must ask. Is it life or property over life? That question is a safety question. Are we going to fight this fire because we want property? Or we are going to fight this fire because we don't care whether we're going to survive or not? So that's very critical. And as he mentioned, there are 2 types of people. If those people are missing when we go for a firefight, then there'll be a problem. Normally you find people wanting to suggest or make decisions. It's not a question of whether you're educated, it's a question of the person who's leading, who has command of what is happening. So the person who has command, number 1, must understand, in fact, everyone must understand, fire is a science, okay, which takes in the 3 elements of fire. Fire is a science. So as a science, you must understand the weather conditions, okay, and continually check on the weather conditions. You need to know the wind speed. You need to know the dryness, which is the curing. You need to know the humidity. You need to know when it last rained. Those conditions help you decide whether it's life over property or property over life.
Okay, so you are talking about the weather. Now let's talk about climate change. How is climate change influencing wildfires?
Well, if you recall, the last time we talked about it's a kind of like a chicken and egg situation. Okay, fires induce climate change, and climate change induces fires. Okay, so in this instance, because of the current situation, global warming, the temperatures have risen. It makes it a good environment for fires. So when the temperatures rise as a result of global warming, you will always experience a lot of fires. So that's the downside of temperature. And so one of the things, when there's a fire also, it also increases the global temperatures. Because the smoke or the emissions that are caused thereof then cause what we call greenhouse effect. They go into the ozone and they trap the heat from the earth from going out of the earth and the atmosphere. So the temperature rises as a result of that. So climate change is also driving these fires, and we are seeing it all across the world.
Wow.
And the numbers are just rising. So it's important for us as Zimbabweans or anyone else to really say, look, because of climate change, we need to be careful when we decide to start a fire. We could take you through a lecture of the science of fire that I was talking about, the 3 elements of fire, which is ignition, biomass, and of course the wind, the oxygen. So these are the 3 things that we must manage. Unfortunately, because of climate change, we are seeing a lot of wind in different times of the season. July, August. But we are seeing wind coming through in the month of October, and that is driving most fires that are occurring.
Okay, thank you very much. After, in the final segment, I'll come to you, Mr. Nwaja. We are talking about Veld fires. This is People on Earth. We shall be taking a short break. Do stay with us. Welcome back. This is People on Earth, and today we are talking about Veld fires. So before the break, Mr. Mwajo, we're talking about climate change and Veld fires. Probably you would want to elaborate more on that.
If we look at the adverse effects of climate change across the globe, we've got floods taking place in Japan. Nigeria is flooding as we speak. Adverse temperatures, floods in mainland Europe itself. We've got the ice caps melting up in the North Pole, and all these are very adverse effects of climate change and global warming that's taking place around us. If you look at Somalia right now, they're facing their worst droughts in over 40 years. This is because of all the effects of climate change. And when it comes to Veld fires, then what it just means is fires are going to get more vicious. They're going to increase in intensity, in frequency, and the cured biomass, okay, is even going to get drier. So what it just means is the state of our forests, our indigenous trees, will be ripe for fires. Fires at the end of the day will end up destroying all the forests and woodlots and woodlands and grasslands that we have because of climate change. And so, like he alluded to at the beginning of the discussion, that these fires are caused by us, anthropogenic. The human beings are causing fires. If we don't change our behavior, the end result is we'll have extremely severe droughts, we'll have extreme weather coming our way. The cyclone was just one of those. We'll have more of cyclones. We'll have flash floods, mudslides. Why will we have mudslides? Because all the topsoil is destroyed when we have Veld fires. And when you have a Veld fire that destroys the topsoil, and we get into another season without rains coming through, and there's continuous burning again, what we're doing is we're just loosening up literally the whole top soil layer. And when fires do, and when the rains do eventually come, they just wash it off all the way. So eventually we have mudslides, we've got siltation and all these things. And when we eventually want to start cropping again, the soil is so poor, harvest is affected and so forth. And then another thing that I wanted to talk about was pollination.
I almost forgot that.
We've pollination, we actually don't realize it, but our insects, our bees and so forth and so on, as they just move around, they pollinate our crops. And that increases the quality of the harvest that we eventually get. So when fires come and they destroy the beehives and they destroy all the insects, we, at the end of the day, don't have the insects to do the pollination. And what eventually happens is that our crops, the harvest is very poor, the quality of the crop is poor. It's even susceptible to more insecticides and diseases and so forth and so on. So, we must respect the state of the nature that we have and try our best to behave ourselves from a perspective of how we manage ourselves around putting fires or containing fires when we actually do controlled burning and land preparation and things like that.
Okay, so now we're just talking about the effects of Veld fires. Are there any positive effects of Veld fires? I understand that Veld fires, they cause massive damages to a lot of things, climate change and everything. So to what an extent can fire, if I may say, be a positive impact on yes?
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting question. And remember, our environment, savanna in Moimbo, is fire adapted, meaning it must burn at some stage. Remember, the soil that we have under our trees, we have the seed bank. Some of the seeds that we have need fire to open up so that they can regenerate. So fire is important for our space, and it must burn at some stage. But the challenge that we are now seeing, at a nominal, Zimbabwe, the best was 400,000 hectares burnt every year. But now we are seeing it's now going, we've actually surpassed last year's before the end of the season. We are now 1.2 million hectares, okay, according to EMA. And that is the alarming side of it. So fire is good. There's a time where it must burn so that we can regenerate and regrow our plants. And in some instances, for those who do thatching, they say that when you burn, at some stage, you burn your grass. Then following year, you'll have very good grass for your thatching. So those are some of the positive things. But it's important to do it properly and to do it at the right time and to be aware of your surrounding. Now, the problem that we are seeing is when somebody uses fire, they forget that it will end up running away. So that's the good side of using fire.
Okay, so as we end this program, what are some of the safety precautions one has to know when dealing with veld fires?
Okay, always make sure that you have safety gear. That's the most important thing. When you are going to attack a fire, whether it's a firefighting team or whatever, make sure that you're adequately prepared. Farm laborers normally wear gumboots. Now those are very dangerous to go to fight fires. You're going to step on chaff, and that chaff has heat and still has ignition in it. It will burn the gumboots. You're just going to cause more damage, or you're going to injure yourself. And we must make sure that we've got all the equipment. We must make sure that we've got our fire beaters, we've got our rakes, our shovels, our hose, our picks, so that we can, create fire guards or safety points, escape routes, and so forth and so on. So we must be adequately equipped. There's no way that we can fight fires when we don't have equipment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. And what would be your final words to people at home regarding veld fires?
I guess one of the important things is let's continue training around fires. We can never exhaust training, we're continually training. And then number one, I think the last thing that I would like to say is let's, as much as to those landowners, let's live well with the people around us, our workers. We've seen that disagreements translate to fires, arson, where you have not paid somebody. That person eventually starts a fire because he wants to fix you. So it's important to also look at those issues. Those are social aspects of our relationships with people, so that we do not translate to disagreements where we are fighting over by using fire as a tool. So that's my encouragement to Zimbabwe. Landowners, please, let's protect our areas. Fire guards, let's live well in harmony with the people around us, so that in the future we don't see fires breaking out.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mwaja and Mr. Chimwedzi, for sharing with us such important information on veld fires.
Sure, thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Okay, so this was People on Earth. We were talking about veld fires. Let's prevent veld fires at home. Until next time, stay safe.